My article today is about the gift that keeps on giving, lovely New York. So, without further ado, from MJ Biz Daily, Chris Casaccia, most New York cannabis operators to save big without potency tax. New York Governor Kathy Hochul's push to replace the state potency tax on cannabis products with a flat excise tax went into effect June 1st, the beginning of the new fiscal year for the state. Most marijuana operators in the developing East Coast market are applauding the move, which particularly will benefit small retailers and processors as well as social equity licensees, industry sources told MJ Biz Daily. The tax change implemented as part of the state's $237 billion fiscal 2025 budget is considered a win for consumers as well. Retail cannabis products are expected to drop in price, a key development as state-regulated marijuana companies compete against hundreds of unlicensed weed shops in the state, particularly in New York City. Hochul, who has called the state's rollout under her leadership of an adult-use cannabis market a disaster, recommended in January that the potency tax on marijuana products be repealed and replaced by a flat 9% excise tax. 9% is still a lot, y'all. Under the state's 2021 legalization law, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, operators are required to pay a half a cent per milligram on total THC for flower, 0.8 of 1 cent per milligram for concentrates, and 3 cents per milligram for edibles. For most operators with the average market pricing, it created a 25 to 30% tax, said Nicholas Guarino, CEO and co-founder of Naturie, I can't pronounce it, so sorry, they all sound the same, a Hossick Falls-based cannabis extractor that distributes solventless hash, live rosin, and distillate products to more than 100 retailers in the state. Corporate and consumer savings. The potency tax also establishes untenable prices on some products, such as tinctures, which faced a 60% tax markup per unit in some cases. With the tax change, Naturie plans to lower prices on roughly 30% of its offerings with discounts of 15 to 35%. That should allow operators to now have some profitability to reinvest in growth and reinvest in their marketing, he said. And it's going to allow big companies, of course, to lower their pricing. New York cannabis retailers rejoice. In the first 3 months of the year, Silly Nice, a Black and veteran-owned brand headquartered in New York City, paid nearly $20,000 in THC taxes, cutting significantly into its profit margin. The potency tax change is a welcome relief for co-founder LeVar Thomas, who said the brand will now be able to offer more affordable prices, enhance variety, and support to small business growth. With the recent tax change, we can now use these funds to better serve our community. We can invest in more marketing to grow our brand and reach more customers and also support local charitable initiatives. This change allows us to make a bigger positive impact. The tax change will make adult use cannabis more affordable while reducing the appeal of the illicit market, according to Vlad. What up, Vlad, CEO and co-founder of Happy Monkey, which is opening its first store in the Washington Heights neighborhood of Manhattan. The removal of the potency tax is a game changer for the New York cannabis industry, he said. Economic impact awash. For New York's vertically integrated operators such as Chicago-based PharmaCann, the economic impact of the policy shift is expected to be nominal. That's because registered organizations, New York's term for the 10 multi-state operators licensed to initially serve its medical market, are taxed in the adult use market at the wholesale and retail levels. In rough terms, the economic impact is a wash for registered operations, PharmaCann spokesman Jeremy Unruh told MJ Biz Daily via email. Time will tell whether suppliers who truly benefit the change pass those savings on to the customer. That is very true. PharmaCann was one of 6 ROs that regulators approved to enter the recreational market on December 29th, exactly 1 year after the state launched adult use sales. You mean that 1 year where they couldn't even open up enough dispensaries to have that 1 year be a start for anybody? Yeah, that 1 year. The controversial policy shift effectively eliminated a 3-year waiting period for ROs to enter the expanded market and erased the first mover advantage for social equity retailers and small suppliers. Sounds like California and the last minute removal of the acreage cap. New York cannabis payments dilemma. While the elimination of the potency tax has garnered widespread support in the New York market, collection of the flat 9% excise tax already are creating because of unpaid invoices. Lack of payments is one of the largest challenges in the cannabis industry, one that ultimately led to the collapse of retailer MedMen, distributor Herbal, and others. Under the current tax payment structure, New York operators have only 20 extra days to collect accounts receivable from the business quarter, a daunting task given the cash constraints of nearly every cannabis business. Complicating matters, nearly all New York licensed marijuana operators currently are in some type of tax payment plan with the state, according to sources. We have a good mechanism for collections in place, a delinquency posting list, but our average collection time is about 42 to 45 days, even on a 30-day net terms, which is what most of the market allows. This is by Notorious Guriamo. They didn't realize that the net 30 terms they were putting in place were going to jeopardize operators collecting the money that they want to get paid on. The situation is likely to worsen, according to Aaron Riley, co-founder and CEO of Certified Testing and Data, a state-licensed cannabis product testing laboratory in Albany. Stores aren't paying producers as fast as they had previously agreed, so there's this huge cash flow gap where the processor and the cultivator owes this potency tax, and they haven't gotten paid for their product yet. This is Yarrow Kubrin, High at 9 News. Thanks for bearing with me on what is arguably one of the more wordy articles that I've covered. However, I would like to go back to the main theme of this, which is the removal of a potency tax. I'd like to know what the other guests and panelists think about that in regards to prudent cannabis policy.
Well, I think potency taxes are just ridiculous, personally. So I'm glad that they got rid of it. I'm pretty sure that they will try to bring it back in the disguise of something else in some way, some type of fee or something like that. But time will tell. I'm glad that they got rid of the potency tax. I think all states should get rid of potency taxes. It hinders the market and only fuels the trap market.
So like you, I am not in favor of a potency tax. I think it is where the borrowed rubric from the adult bev industry finally doesn't make sense. And removing the potency tax and replacing it with 9% is still the boot on the neck of the industry. And so I think when we talk about sensible taxes, we cannot talk about sensible taxes until those number rates are very, very low. And we talked about that in Washington State. We're talking about that in New York. And we're also getting quotes in this article from MSOs that are like, yeah, this is a wash for us. And so I think what they're really saying in the politest possible way is that it's likely not going to reduce the substantial impediments to a profitable regulated cannabis business that's operating in New York State. And I think that's the bigger problem. Just
Fair enough.
Yes.
Did you say in here that MedMen closed because they were owed money?
It attributed the collapse of Herbal and MedMen to taxes, which we could argue is not the primary factor for either of those companies' demise.
Definitely not. That's a big piece of gaslighting in that article right there. Or maybe it's a smokescreen because it's so much gaslighting.
Either way, we know that those companies had a greater chance of being around longer if they had been operating in a paradigm where the taxes weren't soul crushing. But I don't believe that either of those companies went under primarily because of the tax structure.
Yeah, that's the biggest BS line I've heard all day today. And I've been watching the news all day.
The other thing I think that's interesting is that New York, with all of its hubris, which is what I've always talked about on this show, has continued to replicate policy missteps. In the 11th hour, California removed the acreage cap, which was initially intended to give the small mom and pop, the cottage operator, a multi-year head start on large mega grows. And I say mega grows the way Johnny Depp said mega pint, right? Like a mega grow. And in the 11th hour, that was eviscerated, gutted from what ended up being our final rules and regulations. And we've got enough time since that has been passed to be able to look back in the 2020 hindsight rearview mirror of policy and to say that was not A, what was sold, B, what was intended, and C, didn't create a vibrant, thriving marketplace of small to mid-sized companies. And so when New York initially stood up this multi-year restriction on MSOs coming in and then reduced that to next to nothing, I wonder why there wasn't somebody in that room at that table pointing out how that didn't already work in California. And so they continue to make mistakes and missteps on the way that they implement and form their policy that for those of us with a little bit of experience, can already see before those things play out just how troublesome that's going to be for all stakeholders. And so that 1 year head start was not adjusted up based on the slow rollout of retail, which is what would have been the reasonable thing to do. Instead, that 3 year head start was adjusted down to 1 year, and that 1 year was supposed to be somehow a competitive advantage. The 1 year wasn't a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
It was a shit show dumpster fire where people spent a lot of time and money sitting on the sidelines or in the pit waiting to get their race car on the racetrack. And so it didn't provide a head start. And so when New York rolled out slowly the implementation of its grand plan to have a lot of retail, when that took a longer period of time, that head start should have been commensurate. And
it's still taking a long period of time, Yarrow. It's still dragging.
100%.
Yeah.
We've got more trap shops in LA than they have regulated shops in all of New York State.
Fair enough. Any final thoughts on this, Brandon, before we get out of here?
No, like you said, I get the full potency thing is just a joke to me because the people that still buy on the highest potency, like I just laugh at. So
yeah, you can't just laugh at them though. You gotta really educate them and kind of explain to them. And this is the thing that the industry needs is a whole public education campaign for the general public in regards to this, because it is just misguided thinking by these people, and yet the stores just buy into it because they don't want to pay, and really a lot of them can't afford to pay to do a whole education campaign to educate every single consumer. And then at the same time too, all the stores would have to be in on it, because if I'm next to a store that's doing that, and all the customers aren't going to want to hear that at first. They're not going to want to hear that they're wrong, and so they're going to leave and find a store that tells them that they're right and validates their thinking about purchasing on THC limits, and they're going to get all the business too. So you got to it's got to be a whole industry thing all the way around.
Yeah, I just hate that the people that walk into a dispensary say, "Hey, what's the strongest gas? What's the most gas you got?"
Well, I mean,
well, not like what effect am I looking for? What am I? But you're also looking for an effect too. Like you go in and say, "I want the best gas that's going to make me do this, that, and this."
No. I just want the best gas. Period, bro. I just want the best gas. Period. Whatever's the best gas is, it's going to do whatever it does, and I'm good with that. That's how I look at it.
Well, I go for profiles because I smoke too much during the day that I cannot have anything that's got linalool in it, or I'm going to take a nap.
Interesting. Everybody's body's different.